If you remember Logan wearing trendy flannel, being sat on by the Blob, and forgetting his parachute, then you grew up playing X-Men Origins Wolverine. But which one? Because there were 5 completely different versions of this game released, and in this video we're going to compare each of them. Now usually I'd start by taking a look at the most high-spec flagship version of the game, but in this case I think the PlayStation 2 and Wii version is a better place to begin. You see, this version is as generic a movie tie-in as it gets. It's a hack-and-slash action game set across a series of linear levels with some light platforming. The game broadly follows the plot of the movie. It opens in the Canadian countryside with Logan taking on a bunch of locals who are jealous of his trendy flannel shirt. And for some reason they just keep screaming "I'm sorry" as they fade out of existence.
I'm sorry! I'm sorry! I can't stop the bleeding!
It's ironic because there's not really any blood. It's almost like they're thinking of another more gruesome version of this game. Anyway, like most hack and slash games of the time, Wolverine has both a heavy and a light attack, some basic upgrades, and a rage mode. Logan also has a focus mode which helps him see clues. You can also use the lunge attack to traverse environments using the waggle on the Wii version. The waggle features will also be used for quick time sequences, which there are plenty of. There are a few pre-rendered cutscenes which are used by most of the versions of this game, but most of the story is told through in-engine cutscenes. They did get Hugh Jackman to do the voice, but I'm not sure about getting his likeness right. He looks more like a handsome wolfman. Also, some of these cutscenes can be unintentionally hilarious.
You slowing down in your old age?
Thought I was done with you.
She tasted like strawberry pie.
I like how Sabretooth just jumps out of the truck, which will continue driving itself for another 5 minutes while they have their boss battle, which involves him getting run over. As I mentioned, this version is pretty faithful to the movie's plot. Logan fights Victor, then undergoes the Weapon X procedure before escaping and making his way through the Canadian wilderness, which is filled with giant robots. Afterwards, you get a flashback level in Angola, which sets the backstory. Logan then takes on the Blob, whose special move is to sit and fart on you.
Here comes one now!
This is followed by a level in New Orleans taking on Gambit, and then a final level on 3 Mile Island where you take on Wade Wilson. Now, unlike the movie, this fight happens inside the facility and has Logan finish off Wade with a big fan. So that's it for the Wii and PlayStation 2 version. A typical middle-of-the-road tie-in game. It's by no means terrible, but it's very much forgettable. And now that we've laid the groundwork, let's move on to the next-gen version released for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and PC. Now this version actually starts in the jungle. Oh look, Logan's forgot his parachute. I'm sure he'll find a way to land without hurting himself or anyone. Oh my god! Does anyone have a Stinger missile for the helicopter? Never mind, he's just gonna lunge onto it. Hey, watch out for that propeller, you don't want to lose a thing. Oh! Okay, this is like an ancient stone creature. I'm sure there is no way you can make this look gruesome. Never mind, he's bleeding lava. That's right, this version of the game, known as the Uncaged Edition, is notorious for its high levels of graphic violence and gore, both to the enemies and Logan himself. Look, it's but a scratch, I'm sure he'll be alright. Now, if you set aside the graphic details, the gameplay itself is actually quite similar to the previous version. This is still a hack and slash action game set across a bunch of linear levels. There are some light platforming and puzzle elements, plus Logan can use his feral sensors and rage-based attacks. Now, there hasn't been any official confirmation of this, but the rumor is that this game actually started life as an original Wolverine game that was supposed to capture the brutal tone of the character from the comics, but it was turned into a movie tie-in at some stage in development. The main evidence for this is how the game deals with the plot. Throughout the game, you'll get several levels set in Angola, which sets up the backstory behind Stryker's mercenary group, including this pivotal scene where Logan quits. Now, this scene also happens in the movie, but it takes place in Nigeria during the night. I'm guessing the developers already had several Angola levels ready to go and decided to repurpose them. This is followed by the Victor Creed battle and then the Alkali Lake escape, but then the game decides to focus on an entirely different story. This one takes place in Bolivar Trask's secret facility and has Logan help Mystique take down his Sentinels. The game tries to connect this to the movie by throwing in will.i.am. The boss fight against the Blob also seems to have been repurposed as it takes place in a supermarket instead of a boxing ring, while the Gambit section is much longer and has you make your way through this elaborate skyscraper instead of a back alley brawl. Then again, some of these levels could have been based on an earlier draft of the script, as is often the case with tie-in games. The final boss fight does take place on top of the cooling tower, just like in the movie, and this version of Wolverine actually looks like Hugh Jackman. The Uncaged edition would go on to be well received by both fans and critics, with many preferring it to the movie itself. Okay, let's move on to the handhelds, and first up is the PSP version. This version reuses some of the PlayStation 2 character models, but that's about all it has in common with that game. The levels have been built from the ground up for the PSP with a portable pick-up and play design in mind. The combat is similar to the other versions, only this time around you can finish off most enemies with a pounce, while Rage Mode stops time. There are some basic platforming elements, but most of the game will be spent chopping down hordes of enemies. I admire this ninja's devotion to the crossbow even when I'm standing like an inch away from him. Wow, grotesque mutations in overalls, an interesting design choice. This time around the story is framed around Stryker trying to extract Logan's memories via torture, with each memory consisting of a level. This version also includes several levels in Japan where Logan takes on the Hand, an evil organization comprised of samurai and guys who dress like Raiden from Mortal Kombat. This is also an homage to some of Wolverine's Japan storylines from the comics, and a handy way to pad out the story, as the mercenaries will just keep appearing in situations you'd never expect. Another thing of note about this version is that Logan gets a few costume changes in between the levels. He starts with this nice man bag in Japan, then the red flannel, then black underwear while he runs through the snowy Canadian wilderness, and then green flannel in the log cabin. Don't you hate it when you're just trying to chill at your Airbnb and then someone tries to snipe you? Hold on, did they just run out of budget for the textures at the end? Oh, I see, it's a holographic training chamber. Very smart. Okay, next up is the Nintendo DS version, which starts with Logan writing his resume. Name's Logan, born a mutant, retractable claws, fought in lots of wars. I mean, I've seen worse. This version has more of a stylized design, which can be a bit hit or miss. Victor, maybe cut down on the pies. Now, gameplay-wise, this is a side-scrolling beat-em-up set across 2.5D levels. And if it looks familiar to Web of Shadows, that's because both games were developed by our friends at Kryptonite. As expected, the game has you going through a bunch of levels, slicing bad guys, and taking on bosses. When Logan fills up the rage bar, he literally flies off the screen, and then you can use the touchscreen to scratch at the enemies. Now that's immersive gameplay. Apart from that, it's a pretty short and forgettable DS game. And finally, we have the Java mobile version. This is another 2D side-scroller which has Logan run, slash, and climb his way through several levels. It looks pretty good for a Java game, and even allows for attribute upgrades at the end of each level. But the developers did forget that Wolverine can regenerate. And so there we have it, every version of X-Men Origins Wolverine. A nice collection of run-of-the-mill tie-ins, and one of the most brutal games of a generation. Please let me know which version you played growing up, and which X-Men games you'd like to see me cover in the future. As always, thanks for watching. Please consider supporting me on Patreon, and a big thanks to all my existing patrons. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.